Good morning. Welcome to our Budget Committee. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of our Budget Committee on September 26th. I'm Lene Palmisano, and I chair this committee. And with me here at the dais are council members Reich, Schrader, Goodman, and Johnson. We have 7 departments giving their departmental briefings of the mayor's recommended budget to us today. The largest is Public Works, and there are some small but mighty ones in here too. We will go according to the order of the agenda, and we'll start with 311. Trish Glover, please join us. Welcome.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair. We are a small but mighty one.
Yes.
So as you can see from the slide, this is just our org chart. My position and my operations manager, who's under the 311 supervisors, are agents, and then I have a staff of analysts that are under me. I'm not asking, or our current service level this year has increased by 4.4%, and that's just going to be because of increased personnel costs and cost allocations. Whoops. Sorry. And I don't have any change items this year.
Thank you, Ms. Glover. Are there questions or comments, not about the inflationary increase, but about 311? I have to say that 311 was one of the most interesting results meetings that I had been to.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate all that you do, as well as we know that we need to work to innovate to make 311 a really effective interface for residents. And we hear your frustrations on the back end is you're not the end taker of whether it's filling that pothole or getting that complex service coordinated. So I really appreciate all you do. I understand the kinds of difficult calls that you take, and I hope that you and all of the people in your call center know how much we appreciate it as a service to the city. I don't have any other questions. It doesn't sound like my colleagues do either, so I'll just go ahead and move to receive and file this as your 311 departmental budget briefing. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries.
Madam Chair, thank you for the kind words, and I'll let my staff know.
Next, we have Director Hughes with the 911 department presentation. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair and council members. My name is Kathy Hughes. I am the Director of Emergency Communications. I'm here today to present the Emergency Communications 911 2020 budget as recommended by Mayor Fry on August 15th, 2019. Minneapolis 911 is a vital link between the public and emergency responders. We strive to collect and disseminate all requests for service in an efficient, courteous, and compassionate manner. These actions help save lives, protect property, and assist the public in their time of need. Minneapolis 911 is always here, always ready. Currently, we have 61 dispatchers. We are authorized to have 69, and we are working to hire to reach that authorized number. We are also working on hiring one more supervisor and one more person for administration. This will bring our total staff level to our authorized number of 85. I am very proud of our dispatchers and MECC. They do an excellent job. They are committed and dedicated to the city of Minneapolis, especially in very stressful circumstances. The current service level for 2019 was $9,813,000 with $515,000 in other funds, which are enhanced or E911 funds. The use of the E911 funds are regulated by state statute. If you'd like that statute, it's 403.113 subdivision 3. MECC can use those funds for call handling equipment, 911 recording equipment, radio consoles, CAD equipment, which is the computer-aided dispatch equipment, the computer that speaks between the dispatchers and first responders. Network expenses, training, reverse 911 alert or emergency preparedness systems, and workstations. For 2020, the mayor's recommended budget has an increase of 2.9% for a total of $10,098,000. The increase is for inflationary increases in operating costs, including salary and fringe. We are not asking for any other increases to our budget for 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments? Councilmember Schrader.
And just have a question about the dispatch system. It was recently in the news that the one you had bought didn't work out. Can you talk a little bit more about that and also talk about how it's affecting response times?
Are you referring to ProQA?
Yes.
Yes. So we recently made the decision to remove ProQA as our protocol system. The system did not integrate with our CAD system, and it made the processing of a call take longer, which could increase response times from first responders. It officially will be gone from our system October 31st.
Okay, thank you. And what is going to be done in the replacement? Are you looking for a different system? What is kind of the process?
So right now, we're in the process of retraining the dispatchers who were only trained on ProQA. We are going to finish the training and hire a new group. We're going to hire them and train them the way we've always trained dispatchers, just on problem nature codes without a script system. And we will reevaluate if or the possibility of a new protocol system, but not until next year. Right now, it's not even being discussed.
Okay, thank you for the update.
Yes.
As my computer reboots, if you could use your flags. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I appreciate hearing that about ProQA. I guess my question would be, how did that get selected in the first place if it didn't integrate with CAD, if it increased those call times? I guess, how did we not see that coming, and how do we prevent that from happening in the future? So what went wrong?
Thank you for that question. This was prior to me starting. I just started in July as the new director. The decision on choosing ProQA was done by previous leadership. Why they came to that decision, I am not sure. I was not part of those discussions.
And maybe that's something too that's also offline as well, that I could get some more clarification on that. But I would think that previous leadership would work in consultation with IT, and that there'd be a robust process around evaluating different software, that we'd go out for RFP, that we'd have some sort of records around that. So I understand, I'm not trying to beat you up for that decision or anything. Obviously, you are new to this role, and we appreciate the decision of being able to switch away from a system that's not working very well. And I think that's positive, but I would like to, on the back end, at least understand how we came about that, because I think there's a lesson to be learned there around what went wrong and how could we avoid that with future software systems. We frequently invest in lots of multi-million-dollar systems around here, whether that's a new police record management service or system, or whether that's our new land management system, or our legislative management system, or all sorts of things. And we just want to make sure that we don't run into problems and avoid problems as much as possible, so we're not redoing work or setting ourselves back by multiple years.
And that is a great question, and I will get you all of that information.
Thank you. Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director, I just wanted to thank you for jumping in to a new role and really embracing kind of where we're at with asking kind of big questions about 911 service and really, bringing so much, I think, enthusiasm to the work group that was established after Councilmember Johnson's staff direction, where we're really looking at our 911 calls and what are folks calling the city about? How can we find efficiencies? How can we make sure that the folks on the phone on the front lines are really supported and have what they need to do their jobs well, and that we're like matching the right response to the right calls? And those are really big questions, and you're taking them on having been in the role after only a few months. So I really think we all appreciate it very much and look forward to hearing more as that work evolves, as I'm sure it will after those few meetings happen. I also wanted to make sure everyone knows that I know there was a short presentation at PSEM kind of updating about that process, but we also have a study session scheduled because there's so many questions, and that's coming up on October 10th from 10 to 12. And I know the PSEM members probably know that, but for the rest of the council members, and that will dive in a bit more to that staff direction work, but also just a bigger picture of, again, what kind of calls are coming into 911, what transitions have we had in technology or in coding, how can we look forward to the future and make sure that we're serving our constituents and the public with the best service possible. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know we'll dive in more at the study session. In terms of your budget, it's pretty straightforward this year. Thank you very much for your time, Director. Again, welcome to the City of Minneapolis, and we look forward to hearing more from you later. If I may, I didn't have quorum the last time I did that in terms of receiving and filing, so now that we do, I will move both the first two reports, the 311 and 911 departmental briefings, for receive and file. Please signify. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Office of Emergency Management with Director Barrett Lane. Welcome.
There we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee members, my name is Barrett Lane. I'm the Director of the Office of Emergency Management, and I'm here this morning to brief you very briefly on the Mayor's proposed budget for our office for 2020. So, as you know, the Office of Emergency Management is in the resilience business. Our vision is one of a resilient Minneapolis enterprise serving a resilient Minneapolis community. And we create that resilient condition through our strategy of working in 5 main mission areas: prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. So everything we do fits into one of those 5 big buckets, either directly or as a matter of support. The team that gets that done is up on your board. We are stable right now as far as that team is concerned. This org chart actually shows our Urban Scholar. We host our Urban Scholar every year, so we do recognize them as part of our team on a contingent type of basis. So we have 9.5 FTEs as we have in the past. From a service level standpoint, as you may recall, we're building out according to national standards, and that work will be completed early part of next year. All of the reorganization, the build out work will be done. We'll be concluding the sort of design build phase of our workout, and we'll be moving into a steady state phase starting next year. So next year will be a transition as we wrap up and do some of the fit and finish work and the implementation work. And then we'll be rolling forward on a steady state basis from 2020 into 2021. So all of that reorganization and all that work is coming to a conclusion now. The resources that we've allocated into this budget are sufficient to accomplish that mission. So at this point in time, we're not asking for anything additional other than the, if you will, cost of living increase that the finance department has allocated to us. So overall, we're making good progress toward stabilizing the department, delivering on our mission, making sure that we can manage according to national standards, and the resources that you all have provided, which we appreciate, are sufficient to that task. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Madam Chair, if you have questions. Otherwise, I'll let the next speaker continue on.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments for the Director of Office of Emergency Management? I'm not seeing any, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'll move to receive and file his presentation. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Next, we have internal audit with Director Ginger Bigby. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano, committee members. I'm Ginger Bigby, Internal Audit Director. I will start with what our key activities are in internal audit. We provide objective and independent audit services and consultation services, advisory services for the City of Minneapolis, its boards and commissions. I think one of the ways that we add value with a small audit team is by doing risk-based value-added activities. We were able to improve our deliverables, maintaining the same staff level from 2018 to 2019 by having internal process improvements and being agile, being willing to change direction if we see that there's a better path to take that offers better risk coverage. Speaking of that agile process, we're seeing management adopt that as well. We're seeing more agility in the information technology and in the police department as we've worked with them recently. So we're having just a small decrease from 2019 to the 2020 budget. I don't think this will have an impact on our service level. I expect to produce at the same rate in 2020 that we're doing in 2019. And we'll continue to make internal process improvements as we go and perhaps gain more efficiencies that way. We're also able to leverage our budget for hiring external consultants to help give us better risk coverage for the city and given a small internal team. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Councilmember Schrader.
Director Bibby, I just want to thank you. Your audits have been really just very helpful to the council, so I just want to thank you and your team for all the work they've been doing.
Thank you very much, Committee Member Schrader. We really appreciate the support of all City Council members and for the support of the Audit Committee. It's been wonderful. And we're beginning our enterprise risk assessment for the next year, so we really appreciate any feedback that everyone has.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm not seeing any other comments or questions. So with that, I will move to receive and file the Internal Audit 2020 budget presentation. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you for your time.
Good day.
Next, we'll have the City Assessor's Office. I don't see them in the room just yet. We're moving along pretty quickly. Do we have MBC in the room ready for presentation? We don't. We will take a short pause here and try to get one of these next presentations queued up. There we go. We are on air again.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Director Hutchison.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano and members of the Budget Committee. I am pleased to be here to present the proposed budget for Public Works for 2020. I would like to, by way of our departmental overview, recognize the entire team who have worked hard to assemble this budget. We're a larger department arranged into three main areas: transportation, utilities, and business administration. We have a few directors here with us. Al Thunberg with Fleet, Don Elwood is on his way in, transportation engineering and design. The other directors would normally be here to support and are extremely supportive of this budget development and discussion process. I also want to recognize Vicki Stone, Brett Jelly on our Public Works team. They spend countless hours assembling the budget, and then also the budget team. We're a large and sometimes complicated department, and Micah and Robert have spent so much time with us making sure that we're making a really good proposal. So I'm going to move on now and discuss the Public Works budget in three main parts. A little bit unusual, but we do have an opportunity to tell you about our current service level. That'll be part one. We'll tell you about our proposals, new proposals, part two. We're going to talk a little bit about the capital budget, and then we're going to also review utility rates. So each of our programs are remaining relatively flat this year. Just a couple of changes. The largest change that you'll see here is in the administration division, where one-time funding last year is not included this year. That's exactly as it should be. It shows as a larger decrease, but that just accounts for one-time money that is not proposed for this year. Some other changes to note: in fleet, we're working on refining our parts system and management, and that's leading to a reduction in that budget. In water treatment is relatively flat. In sanitary sewer, as we see this each year, the Met Council Environmental Services charges usually brings us up by a few percent. In stormwater, we are sort of wrapping up on some major studies and moving that into capital, so the decrease is sort of offset in an increase in capital. In transportation, planning, design, and engineering all grouped together, this is how we plan and build our projects. I wanted to note an increase there. It's a very small increase, but it's an interesting one. The more street reconstruction we do, the more paving lab work we have. And we're noticing that we're a little bit stretched and sometimes falling behind in the testing. And if you're ever curious, I did this recently where I went to the paving lab and they showed me what the cores look like, what it looks like when it goes in the machine. The machine tries really hard to break the cores. We're just doing more and more of that work as our street reconstruction is growing, so that budget is growing by a little bit. In operations and mobility, basic inflationary increases, and same in transportation maintenance. Sometimes our inflationary increases are offset by some savings. So while we are remaining pretty flat through most of our organization, you'll see some variation in each of the program areas. Before I move on to our change items, are there any questions about the base budget?
We do not at this time.
Great. So I have 4 change items to present to you today. The first item we've titled Advanced Mobility, and this is a title that we've been using in the development of our Transportation Action Plan and as a heading over the work that addresses all of the new mobility, things that we would have never dreamed of 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, that are operating on our streets. I think you're familiar, many of you are familiar with the work that is going on. Scooters, while we don't love talking about them, they are sort of a reality out there and something that didn't exist 3 years ago, that take management today. We currently have about a staff person working on these issues, and it's simply not enough for us to keep pace with how rapidly things are changing. And I'll go back, 5, 6 years ago with Uber and Lyft, how those are operating and being managed on our street. It just takes a tremendous amount of effort, and we do not see that slowing down. We see it speeding up as mobility continues to change. What we do on our curbside is going to mean a lot in everything. So we are proposing, sort of going backwards, 2 full-time positions to help us manage this growing need in mobility, and that is ongoing. We're also proposing one-time funding to support the implementation of mobility hubs. Our last mile connections are often the hardest for people to make. It's not always easy to find these new mobility options that are available. And we feel very strongly that in our racially concentrated areas of poverty, especially, and also citywide, that we need to make it easier for people to access all transportation options. We have a pilot that is starting right now that is grant funded. Got some external funding thanks to the Sustainability Office. But next year we'll be making these permanent, and they'll take a little bit of effort. And this is simple things like signing and striping and maybe some electricity if we're going to electrify. So this is budget that is one-time money that will help us do more permanent installations of mobility hubs. This is also a partnership opportunity with St. Paul. St. Paul has proposed something like $1 million for mobility hubs, and we would like to be able to come together with them and have a consistent approach to how we're doing this in the region.
Thank you. There's a question or comment from President Bender.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This might be for Finance or the department. I'm wondering on the source of these funds, just general fund.
Chair Palmisano and Council President Bender, the source of these funds was originally proposed from the parking fund, but it is represented because it is very much about curbside, how the curbside is managed. However, you'll see it represented as a transfer into general fund to reflect the addition of the full-time employees and to give the council an opportunity to see and evaluate the proposal.
I guess I'll just comment on this as likely for follow-up. I would like to challenge us to think more broadly about how we're funding transportation strategies, especially those that are focused in supporting transit, biking, and walking. And I think we need to make significantly more investment in these things. So I'm supportive of us doing so. But, so for example, should we raise fees on Uber and Lyft in order to help pay for the management costs of having 2 full-time employees dedicated to curbside management? Or, should we re-look at our parking fees and continue to sort of challenge ourselves to see if we're really capturing the full cost of parking to our city, or maybe even getting more creative and saying, like, how is parking spaces in new developments affecting our city, and do we want to start to try to bake in fees or other methods of collecting revenue from new development that has significant transportation costs, knowing that there are some state law challenges to that kind of system. We may need to be creative about that, but I have a general question, which is about how we are gathering revenue for transportation uses and how we're spending funds.
Chair Palmisano and Council President Bender. Council President Bender, I just want to say how much I appreciate your leadership on the topic. I know it's a very active conversation and one that as staff we are committed to coming up with solutions that we can present back to the council. I might say that this was sort of a leading idea, not to say the best, but sort of an early idea to think critically about the parking fund and what flexibility we may have under the city's ordinance to be more creative with its use, considering that so much happens on the curbside, including parking, and that what happens on the curbside affects parking so much. So I really appreciate your comments, and I think I've made 2 notes here on really examining parking, and also on the Uber and Lyft or shared mobility ride-hailing, ride-hailing, and if there's an opportunity to look at that structure as well, and we'll be sure to bring that back to our working group to discuss more fully.
Thank you. Councilmember Fletcher.
Sorry, I think my question was answered.
There we go.
Thank you. Our next new proposal this year is expanded service out of our transportation maintenance and repair division on 2 items. One is winter corner clearing, and the other is our maintenance of green infrastructure. On the winter corner clearing, this is an outgrowth of our work over the past 2 years to focus on pedestrian mobility in winter time. We presented information back to the Transportation and Public Works Committee. At the conclusion of that, while we had a high percentage of compliance with snow shoveling, if the corner is not passable, it doesn't matter. So we have come together as an entire team looking at this to say that our next big effort should be on the corners. With some seed funding out of the division, $200,000, and adding to that a new request of $300,000, we are confident that we can expedite corner clearing and take it from about 4 to 5 days down to making sure they're clear in about 2 days. So we're very hopeful that we'll be able to expedite that, and we think it will make a difference. The second item here is an ongoing for $100,000, and it's really a start on our ability to maintain green infrastructure. Much of our green infrastructure can be related to the stormwater system, but there's a high demand for green infrastructure that isn't necessarily related or connected to that infrastructure. I'll use one example. The protected bike lanes on 3rd Avenue have planters. We got real lucky this year in that they just sort of sprouted growth again without our maintenance, so we let them do their thing. But we were very stretched to maintain something like that. It's not something that we had considered or built into our programs, but we want to do more of it. and we want to do more of it because people want us to do more of it. So building in a little bit of maintenance for this will help us partner. We'd like to partner with the park board to do more installations where it may not necessarily be connected to the stormwater system.
Councilmember Schrader.
Thank you. Director, just on both of these, thank you for both of them. What I hear from constituents is just how mobility is shut down in the winter. And it is, everyone will comply but that one person or the corners. And so this is really great to see moving forward. And on the green infrastructure, just more for the public, to whenever we work with another government entity, that adds to the complexity. Although this partnership really makes sense here. While you didn't mention it in this, part of it is like working with our stormwater, working on regenerative agriculture. The park board is going to be critical, so I really thank you for working with them on that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. So I really appreciate the corner clearing. It is something that I hear a lot about from my constituents. I will say this, and I've said to you before, this doesn't feel like as aggressive an approach as I would take to what's been raised consistently as a serious issue from pedestrian mobility in our climate. Are there things that Public Works is interested in doing that didn't make it into the mayor's budget? Are there ways that if we were to think about additional resources for snow clearance that we could produce better results for our constituents?
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Fletcher, thanks for the question. I know this is of high concern. I want to say that something that was funded last year is helping us do more than just this, and that is the right-of-way manager that we were able to add. By adding that right-of-way manager, we've more effectively been able to deploy our inspectors. And we piloted it last year with a certain number, a goal of inspections. We far exceeded it, and we're doubling it this year. We feel that it had a difference on the overall compliance rate, and it also helps to complement 311, what comes in on 311, and offset any confusion that might be caused by the 311 app. So we're going to double our inspections this year. That's one thing. And we're going to be adding more resources to the 311 list. It's a really important thing that we do. If we're going to inspect more, we also have to offer more resources for people who can't shovel. And then we're going to expedite the corner clearing. And those are the three strategies that we've proposed for this year.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the support work that Public Works is proposing for street lighting and litter pickup in the cultural districts. I believe this body has heard a presentation about the cultural districts. Our work is supportive in nature and focuses on areas where we've heard the most concern and complaint, litter pickup especially. Our budget proposal includes a team of 2 that will focus on litter abatement in the cultural districts. I am hopeful that this will give us more information too. Litter is something we hear citywide as well, and we may be able to use this as a test and a pilot for potentially a future proposal. The other part is accelerating the LED lighting change out in these cultural districts. LED lighting is a more reliable light source, and we have heard concern and complaint over the amount and the consistency of lighting in these areas. Okay. The final item is our work on Vision Zero. Just 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, we have presented a draft plan. We are in an iterative process where we get more information and we make more proposals, and this will continue, I think, for the next few years. This year, we have a one-time funding included here for targeted strategies on speed reduction. As you know, we are pursuing the reduction of speed limits in the city. That will need to come with some resources and work. Again, basic things like signage and signal timing. The entire system will need to be retimed, and some education. So this is targeted one-time money to help with that effort, which would begin in the spring of this year. I want to say too that there's a lot of components to the work. The general fund is one way, the capital is another, as well as some existing operational funds that we have. And I had to make a few notes here because the list is long, but this $100,000 adds to some money that we want to bring forward specifically out of our operational budget and dedicate towards making our dollars go further to the sort of quick fix installations. And that would be about $200,000 in one time and $50,000 in ongoing. It complements what we call the 955, which is the operational budget for safety and active mobility. The more information we have about our high injury crash networks, the more we tailor that funding to address the highest areas of concern. And then lastly, the capital budget, which I'm about to talk about. Any questions on this item?
Not that I'm seeing.
Thank you. We're on part 3, so we're doing good. Part 3, I'm going to talk about our capital program. Our proposal, this is the 2020 to 2024, so 5-year capital improvement program. I like to always review this. We make decisions based on data and evaluation, asset condition, equity, historical data, and what we hear out there in the world. We come up with a list of potential projects. There's some qualitative screening, especially as relates to our ability to dig once, take care of utilities at the same time as we're doing a street reconstruction. Also, we often try to coordinate with development as well, as much as we can. I left this slide in because I want to recognize the work of CLIC. The Capital Long Range Improvement Committee is, I think, the one that spends the most time working over a 6-week time period, many Saturdays. The information we give them is voluminous. I think it's a difficult and hopefully rewarding committee, and I really appreciate their work to review our work.
Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Hutchinson. I'm glad you brought up the importance of CLIC. CLIC has made a couple of comments year after year with regard to Public Works process for handling requests, including the fact that, I mean, you know what they are. I don't need to go through them. I think this has risen to an urgent concern, both the issue of why aren't we seeing more projects than there are so that we can pick them. Is the department overworked in that there might not be the capacity to do all the projects based on the extra money that was given for streets? And could we identify streets more broadly to include bridges or other urgent concerns? Because the chair of the Transportation Committee of CLIC is my constituent, I feel the need to bring these issues up because I do think they're good issues, and I also don't think they're critical of Public Works. They're asking, I think CLIC's questions are attempting to help you guys, and they also want to see more projects. They're really after the park board on that piece, but on the streets piece, they would like to see many more projects, and I think in a way they worry about the fact that there isn't enough capacity to take on that many more projects. So could you comment specifically on CLIC's comments within their report so that we have an idea? Is there anyone from CLIC here? It's unfortunate that they don't get to see these budget hearings because I don't want them thinking that we don't take their comments seriously, especially since the mayor's recommended about 90% of all of their projects. So I think these are serious issues, and maybe you could just address them since I know you're aware of it.
Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Goodman, thank you. We are aware of it. This year we spent even more time considering their concerns and what changes we might make. And we've recently communicated back to them that we agree that they should feel like they have more opportunities to make recommendations. When we switched to the 20-year streets funding plan and we were sort of pinned on a number, I can understand why they felt limited on their ability to do their job to make the trade-offs. So we are proposing that we do years 6 and 7, 5 and 6. Mr. Intermill, it's 5 and 6 and 7. We're going to give them beyond year 5 so that they can help make decisions. The problem with making trade-offs in year 1 and 2 is that we're through design and we're lining up our construction resources. But as we get further out, there is opportunity to make some, to have them participate in some decision making. And so we're going to be making that change for next year, and that's been communicated back to CLIC. I think on your second point about resources, we're getting better at this, but the first few years of the 20-year streets funding plan was a very, very steep ramp for us. And I think that our processes are getting better. Our coordination among divisions to make comprehensive proposals is getting better. And I hope that CLIC can see that progress. The bridge question comes up every year. It's not included in the 20-year streets funding plan. That limits the number of dollars that are available, and I know that they feel like their decisions are limited by that too. But we are more than happy to continue to work with CLIC. I personally know the value and the importance of their work, and I would like to have them kind of at our side every time we're making capital improvement proposals.
Madam Chair, Ms. Hutchinson, perhaps part of the next steps could be that you as the director and your directors could meet with the chair of CLIC and the 2 chairs of the committees, or the one that deals with your budget. Just sit down over a cup of coffee and discuss these things with them, because I think in a way they want to be heard. Mm-hmm. And at my point, he's been on the board for 14 years. He's an investment banker from SIT. He's not a dumb guy. And I think he just wants to know that you're hearing what they're saying. They also have some concerns with regard to stormwater rate management and the information they get on that. They've had to make data practices requests to get information from you guys. That is concerning to me. So I do think that there probably needs to be a sit down to discuss how this process has worked going forward, just so everyone can get on the same page. If you're unaware of the fact that they had to make a data practices request, I would assume you think that's a problem, that you didn't give them, not you personally, they didn't get data they wanted, and they made a data practices request and then got the data anyway. We don't want to have that kind of relationship with people who are on CLIC.
Chair Palmisano and Councilmember Goodman, I'm aware of their desire to have more information about our utility pro formas, and we have, upon their request, provided summaries of our pro formas.
I want to call on Director Intermill to maybe add some additional budgetary kinds of considerations about CLIC and Public Works.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think to Councilmember Goodman's points, CLIC did this year, when they were presenting their recommendation to the mayor on the capital budget, suggested that it would be good to have a sort of feedback loop closing. And so that meeting actually just happened a few days ago, where the mayor sat down with CLIC and responded to some of their comments. And one of the big points of discussion was, how do we better integrate the 20-year Parks and Streets ordinance with the CLIC ordinance, and those 2 charges. And so to the director's comments earlier, the best thinking right now, and I think that can evolve, is that year 5 of the capital improvement plan would be over-programmed so that there would be choices for CLIC to make. So that years 1 through 4 become that pipeline. I know personally, I live in the Lindale neighborhood and just got a postcard the other day that said 2 or 3 years from now we'll be seeing a reconstruction of Grand Avenue. And so I think that's just reflective of needing to give some certainty to the professional staff as they design these projects, but also building in that flexibility in year 5 to have CLIC do that important prioritization work that they bring to the table.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, and I can have this conversation privately, but year 5 eventually does become year 1. So I mean, there shouldn't be a concern about projects in year 1 and 2 if they see them in year 5
yes.
and they become 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yes.
So they're not saying change what is in year 1 now, because we made that decision 5 years earlier. I really feel like
Exactly.
we cannot just give them a list of 10 projects that we can fund and say, which do you think are most important? I think we need to give them a list of 30 projects that we could fund to get to 10, or why are they wasting all this time? I mean, these are, I think, of all the people who serve on boards and commissions, maybe other than the Planning Commission, this group spends the most time and is the most skilled, and we take their recommendations. So I'm glad they met with the mayor, but I think in the end, the professional staff know more than almost anyone. And so the respect of the professional staff is where I think the best interaction is, not really with the politicians.
Councilmember Bender?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So over the years, I've heard, various feedback about CLIC, and I like the idea of stepping back and kind of looking at how CLIC's role might change with this bigger pot of money and other changes in our city. So maybe really what needs to happen first is to engage CLIC on that sort of policy level to say, is our, and maybe this has happened as we evolve our scoring systems, but how are our scoring systems working, and how are we prioritizing projects? Because if they're helping influence the criteria ahead of time, then the second piece of going through and scoring each project based on those criteria becomes a different exercise. And I know some of that has happened throughout the years I've been on the council, but especially in light of the few years that we've had now with the new capital investment, it may be worth taking that step back. And I also think, this won't be a surprise, and I'm a broken record on this too, but our comprehensive plan, Minneapolis 2040, guides pretty significant increases of growth in places that are along transit. But that transit service may be a bus that comes every 20 or 30 minutes and may not be reliable because it's stuck in traffic. And it may be on streets that are not used to the kind of vehicle traffic that's still coming along with new development. Or it may be in a part of town that isn't built for pedestrian safety in a way that supports thousands of new people. And so I really also hope that as we go forward in implementing 2040, that we're being really mindful about how we are marrying land development and especially large increases in jobs or housing with our capital program, and not to take away from our race equity goals and the emphasis of race equity in our scoring system, but to think about, can we build on the work that happened in downtown East when we did an urban design plan for that entire area of the city that was going to rapidly change and required developers to put in pedestrian and bicycle safety improvements along with their projects? That might work better in some parts of the city than others. Or even when we're putting in a major capital investment, are we making sure that we have the anti-displacement policies in place to not, make sure that we're not creating more displacement pressure in neighborhoods that are already facing large displacement pressure? So I think as we move forward, combining better our work in transportation and land use planning is something that will also help us plan out farther. We can't predict exactly where there'll be new growth, but we do know where we have guided for significant increases in new growth, and it is already in those most dense neighborhoods in our city, many of which are still not caught up to the thousands or tens of thousands of people who've moved in the last decade or so.
Thank you. Chair Palmisano, Council President Bender, I just flipped back to this criteria page, and I think you bring up a good point about potentially revisiting some criteria to make sure that we're well aligned with the coming land use plan and changes. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Before you go on,
Yes.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. I really just wanted to back up both Councilmember Goodman and Councilmember Bender's comments, because I think they really kind of go together. I think that I've also heard from the Ward 3 CLIC representatives that at the end of the day, they didn't feel like there were a lot of choices to make. And I actually think that one of the roles that kind of participatory process could really play would be to be the people on the ground who can really see when something is changing, right? If there were options and there were projects that were in the pipeline, they might never be a priority, except that, oh, we're adding 1,000 units of housing on that street. Now suddenly we can see that street really does need to be revisited. And so, I definitely think that revisiting those criteria, getting to a place that we're not waiting for the livability problems and street use problems that come with new density to become historical data before we put it in a 5-year CLIC. We're basically telling people we're going to let you be miserable for 8 to 10 years. if we aren't getting more ahead of this. And so I think, looking at this criteria to make sure that we're factoring in future development, so we're not just looking back, but also looking forward at what we're building, and then letting our participatory process with the CLIC be active participants in identifying where those investments make the most sense, feels like something that would be very helpful.
I'll work through each of the major capital programs, and I'll do this briefly. You see this each year, so it's an update each year on the amount of work we'll do in our street paving for 2020. It's $62 million. Over the 5 years, it's $330 million. And it includes residential reconstruction, asphalt resurfacing, concrete rehabilitation, failed streets and alleys. I want to say this early, that every time we redo a street, our Complete Streets Ordinance kicks in, and we make necessary changes to walking, bicycling, for transit, for car traffic, and increasingly we're thinking about freight as well. There are improvements we need to make outside of our paving program. For that, we have a number of other programs that support. So our sidewalk-specific program proposed at $3.5 million this year, and about 17.5 over 5 years. This is fixing our defective and hazardous sidewalks and filling in missing segments of sidewalk. Bridges is always a challenging program for us. There's the need far outweighs our available capital resources, and we prioritize based on an annual bridge sufficiency rating, and we go directly to that data to make our recommendations of what to fix next. Some highlights: Bridge 9 really needs some help and repair, and then generally about $500,000 for repair of bridges in other places. And I will say that this will continue to be a challenge for us. Bridges in the city are very expensive to rebuild and maintain. Traffic control and street lighting. This is generally the category where we're installing, repairing, and maintaining our signal system as well as street lighting. For 2020, it's $7.5 million. Some highlights: every time we upgrade a signal, we are able to make safety improvements in pedestrian countdown timers, building bump outs, and adding pedestrian level lighting. So this is an important program for our maintenance, but it also helps us achieve some of our other goals as well. I might also say that we have a traffic management system, and many of you have visited this. It helps us tremendously to keep traffic moving, especially at peak and rush hour in downtown. We see everything in real time. It's an IT hub more than it's anything else, and it takes maintenance. And so it's this section of the budget that helps us maintain that digital system that we can monitor what's happening on the ground. Bicycle pedestrian projects, again, we can do a lot with our street reconstruction, but sometimes we've got projects that we need to do that are outside of what we're reconstructing. We're proposing $3 million. We're able to do intersection upgrades, focus on our Safe Routes to School program, make traffic safety improvements. And this is where we build our protected bikeways when we don't have a street reconstruction to do it as a part of. And I would say this is a really important program for Vision Zero, and we're, with more data, we're able to target our improvements to improve safety. So I'm going to move on to utilities. I've got a couple highlights here in each of our utility funds. I've shown this graph a couple of times now to the council and to the public as well, and it helps to summarize how we manage the infrastructure. Our decisions are based on a combination of criticality and condition. So we look to pretty much the top right left-hand corner of this graph on infrastructure that is both critical, serves many people, as well as in poor condition. And that's where we focused our improvement efforts. We are looking for a triple bottom line where we're able to improve social conditions, environmental, and financial in accordance with the management of each fund's pro forma. So with that as a backdrop, sanitary sewer, we have televised equipment. We've televised our system, and we continue to televise to understand condition, and we know now that 46% of our infrastructure in the sanitary system is over 100 years old, and the condition is really showing. So we're using that kind of asset management framework to make investments in two main categories: rehabilitation of the sanitary sewer system for $8 million, and infiltration and inflow. This is where we might have a crack where something is coming in that challenges the integrity of the system, about $2.5 million in 2020, focusing on that. I have changed this slide. This used to have a similar condition of the asset, and I've changed it to be sure that we all together see this data. This right here, rain, this is from state climatologists. This is our biggest challenge. One of our biggest challenges in public works is it's raining a lot more with a lot more intensity. And I know you are all feeling it, and we are feeling it. We have been doing a good deal of foundational work to understand where our challenges are and to focus our mitigation projects in areas where we're going to make the biggest difference. So for next year, we continue the work to physically improve the pipes, that's $3 million, and then to specifically work on flood mitigation. We've proposed $5 million each year to work on flood mitigation. It's based on the results of this modeling that we've been doing for the past couple of years, and we've been doing work in 2 locations, and we'll be adding to that based on our modeling results. Water infrastructure.
If
yes.
I may.
Oh, yes.
Councilmember Schrader.
Yeah, I do have a question on the last slide.
Yes.
While all of that, I appreciate all the work that your department's been doing, but it does go back to the underlying question of if our infrastructure is not able to take this, because it doesn't look like we have even arrived at a new normal yet, kind of what is the plan going forward? And I guess to be more specific, updating infrastructure, I think the question I get from my constituents is always like, what are you going to do that? And the question I put back is, I don't know that we know what size pipe's even going to work. We have some infrastructure that was built for rainfall a long time ago that is not, it's not that the infrastructure is failing so much that it just can't take the rain that's happening. So do we base it on what we're seeing in the 1990s, to 2000s, the 2010s? I mean, I don't know that we can get ahead of that yet, but I guess that would be my question of what is kind of the thinking of the department.
Chair Palmisano and Councilmember Schrader, I appreciate the question. We ask ourselves this all the time, and we get this question a lot. And the reason that I show the rainfall graphs is because we are all in this together. And I can't say with confidence that we will, quote unquote, solve this problem. But here are some ways we plan to make it better. One is continually invest in the infrastructure that we have. To ensure that our system is working properly. That includes some proactive actions that we take before we know that it rains. We go and vac out storm drains in low-lying areas and make sure all the pumps are working. So we take very immediate and corrective actions based on weather. That's one thing we're doing. Second is our modeling has gotten so much more sophisticated that we can target in a more detailed scientific way where our investments will have the most impact. 3, we have to get creative about managing stormwater. Our pipes are not going to be able to do it all. So some of what we're looking at in these projects that we're proposing $5 million a year is what can we do on the surface that helps to manage, bring water away from low-lying areas and manage it first before it even hits the pipe system. And we have a position dedicated now to working between street design and flood mitigation. And we have some pretty interesting proposals that we're working with now that I believe will make some difference. But none of those things are a silver bullet, and together we hope that we can continue to mitigate this growing challenge. And you're right, climatologists don't know where the new normal is or is going to be. The state of the practice, APWA, this is the top topic. Professional organizations are grappling with this, and we are grappling with it. So I appreciate the complexity of the conversation and your question.
Councilmember Bender? Oh, no.
Okay. Water infrastructure. So this is one of the most important. This is the most important category of investment we can make. Water is life. We provide 20 billion gallons of safe drinking water each year to our residents and our 6 wholesale customers that we sell water to. If you have not toured the facility, please do it. It's educational and inspiring what we do with river water. We make continuous improvements to our water treatment and distribution system. I'm most excited about our renewable energy. We've partnered with Property Services to plan for solar so that we're using renewable energy as we're treating our water. We also have continuing ongoing improvements in still building the new filtration plant, multiple-year project. And then in distribution, building out a new facility and continuing our advanced metering work, which will benefit every rate-paying resident of the city. I tried to give you a snapshot of our proposed capital projects in transportation. If this is interesting, we're happy to drop off some 11 by 17s. This is 2020 proposed capital investments for transportation improvements. Yes. Okay. Last category here, utility rates. We try to give you an idea as part of our budget. I want to say that last year we worked closely with finance to take a deeper dive in our utility rates and really tried to manage our performance and our rates for predictability and stability in each of the utility funds. That resulted in some changes to our 5-year proposal that are beneficial. We're able to maintain the city's policy on cash balance and improve the stability and predictability of rates while bringing down the rates from what we projected last year. That's not to say that we're reducing rates, but last year we projected a certain number, and this year our projections are just a little bit lower than that. So I feel good about where we are with the rates based on a deeper analysis that we did over the year last year. The total recommended rates for this year is $108 per household, which is a 4% increase over last year. Last year, this time, we had proposed something just slightly higher than that. And in all categories, we're able to reduce slightly the projected utility rates over time, except one, which looks more similar to our proposal last year. This concludes the presentation from Public Works for our proposed 2020 budget. I want to thank you for the opportunity.
Are there any other questions or comments? Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. I'm wondering if you can speak a little about last year's change items. We made some investment in thinking forward to development in our traffic planning. Can you just speak to how that's going,
Sure.
what we're doing?
Thank you, Chair Palmisano, Councilmember Fletcher. I appreciate the question. We made some structural changes in transportation planning to be able to elevate the role of one of our senior transportation planners who has specific experience working in both planning and in transportation planning. So she was once a CPED employee. She's now a transportation planning employee, and we felt she had the very best expertise to lead a team. We could have just assigned it to a person and hired a new person, but we felt like having someone in more of a leadership role in the division could help guide others along, and we could broaden our efforts. This is Becca Hughes. You all know her. She's done amazing work, and she's prepared a framework for how we're going to approach the work, and she's also started to look at the overlap between proposed developments, we have that map, proposed infrastructure improvements, and proposed development review process improvements and changes that help us work more closely with the development community. So I'm optimistic about our ability to coordinate better. We know we need to do more, and we plan to report back to the Transportation and Public Works Committee on our efforts.
Councilmember Bender?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's great to hear, and I appreciate the question and answer on that. This is a more simple item that I just want to mention in light of our capital budgets and all the other demands on our system, which is the issue of our greenway bridges. We have a lot of deferred maintenance on our greenway bridges, which are maintained and owned by most of them. Well, there's multiple ownership structure. A lot of them are owned by HICRA, the Hennepin County Railroad Authority, but there's multiple ownership, and the county has maintained a lot of the bridges that have, or replaced a lot of the bridges that have significant car traffic that are on the county road system, but there's a lot of maintenance problems on the ones that connect to local streets. So there's currently one closed in my ward because of issues with safety concerns. And it's the number that it would cost any entities to replace the bridges is very large. There's also historic preservation issues. So the council members who represent the Greenway wards are part of this conversation. Councilmember Reich and I went to a meeting with the county. It seems clear to all of us that there's a need to prioritize the bridges as well as to seek outside funding, and I appreciate the department's work in both of those things, particularly the second one, because the cost is something like $20 million just for a portion of them, and that would be a big strain on our capital budget. So just wanted folks to know that. I know a lot of our wards connect across the Greenway, and it's used by people from all over the region. So wanted folks to know that was happening. Appreciate the department's work on that, and Councilmember Reich for being there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
With that, thank you for so many of your department heads they came in right as you started, so you are well supported.
Well, I wanted
by
to
a lot
thank
of
you
people
to
here in
the
audience.
thank you division directors. You missed the opportunity where I got to recognize you because we started late, but I recognized you. Thank you for being here.
With that, I will move to receive and file the Public Works Department briefing. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Before we move on to the MBC, we are going to move backwards a little bit. Director Todd, you are going to need to rewind through all of those Public Works slides.
Okay, thanks.
There we go. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chair Paul Masano, committee members, Patrick Todd, Minneapolis City Assessor. It's a pleasure to have an opportunity to talk about my 2020 budget as proposed by Mayor Fry on August 15th. I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping also. I do have a number of staff members here I'd like to introduce. I do have the Director, Rebecca Malmquist, in the front here, and then we have Nancy Wojak, who's our Manager of Assessment Services, Suri Garnett Huhuli, who's a Residential Supervisor, and we have Brian Messer and Tim Ullivan, also Residential Supervisors. So it's exciting to have the support, and they are the brain trust oftentimes to the successes that we have in the office. So as a department overview, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what we do. The Assessor's Office serves the taxpayers of the City of Minneapolis by valuing and classifying real estate accurately, ethically, and equitably citywide. Property taxes fund core services that are provided to Minneapolis residents. These core services include the law enforcement, fire safety, education, parks, recs, as well as some core services that we heard from the Public Works Department. The department staff provide information and analysis to internal and external partners, such as the elected officials like yourself, other department heads, the Minneapolis School District, Hennepin County attorneys, Hennepin County taxpayers, the Department of Revenue, taxpayers, neighborhood groups, and the media as well. So as you can see, there are a lot of stakeholders that rely really upon the important work that my staff do every day. Here's our organizational chart. It hasn't changed for a number of years. I'll just go through it very briefly. If you go from the left to the right, we do have our assessment services team, which Nancy Wojak leads that, and that's really our data analysis and reporting. So when there are the media asks for information, or if you're asking for information ward specific or real estate trends, this information is generally calculated and analyzed, and then supported or taken from that section. Then we also have our central business district and tax exempt team. Then we get into 2 residential teams. We also have a classification team, apartment team, as well as the neighborhood and commercial team. I bring this up because at this point in time, there are a number of stresses that are changing in our department. We have litigation. We handle more litigation in the city of Minneapolis than any city in the state of Minnesota, and we actually outnumber that is for most of the counties as well, with rare exception. And because of that, we're finding that the model that we've been using for almost, I've been here for 29 years, and it looks like the model probably I started with 29 years ago, with some slight changes. So we're stepping back this next year to figure out, what our best practices, but the new challenges and the changing of the real estate market, and how can we better serve the taxpayers, as well as produce a really accurate an efficient assessment system, and as well as responding to appeals and from the tax court, as well as the local boards. So while there's nothing definite, but we have realized, I think we're going to spend the next few months taking a look at, are we really organized and set up for success going forward, knowing that we do have some challenges with the real estate market. Under current service levels, we do handle, and this is what something I already said, we do handle the most tax courts and local boards. We handle about 130,000 valuations a year. We also have over $1 billion of new construction and permits every year. So as regulatory services is out there and approving all the permits, we have to go out there, and we actually are tracking the breaking of the ground all the way up to the final sign off when the building is completed. We also do taxpayer education. We do property tax administration. We also do neighborhood and business engagement. To get into our budget between 2019 and 2020, the approved adopted budget last year was $6,148,000 and 38 FTEs. For the proposed 2020, we're at $6,266,000 with the same 38 FTEs. It's a 1.9% increase. Most of the increase is as a result of wages and benefits, as well as fixed costs, inflationary expenses on some of our fixed costs. For the 2020 changes, Mayor Fry recommends a budget adjustment for the assessor's office. This adjustment will ensure that the department has the resources to meet its statutory requirement and meet the city goals and objectives. It also maintains the overall quality and accuracy of the assessment. And this is my last slide. This is a very, very fast presentation. Essential operating expenses. So these are the expenses. So over the years, we've had to take on additional tools. We've added additional overhead for staff safety. So some of the things that we've been doing are we pay for parking, and parking has far exceeded the costs from our normal budgetary increases year over year. So as a result, we're finding that our parking, we don't have enough funded on an annual basis to pay for parking. Cell phones. Up till about 2 years ago, staff did not have cell phones. We felt it was really a core tool that my staff needed to have for a number of reasons. One is when they leave for the field, they were really not reachable by a taxpayer. This way the phones can roll forward when my staff are out in the field. They can answer phone calls, they can set up appointments. It was also a safety issue, that if somebody's in a place where they didn't feel safe, there was no real way, unless they had their own personal phone with them, to call a 911, or even if they see something and they wanted to call 911. We felt it was just one of those tools that we just had to start supplying the staff. The multiple listing service, the CoStar. So multiple listing service is a fee or a subscription that we pay for to follow up. We oftentimes try to contact either the buyer or the seller on every sale. When that's not possible, the multiple listing service is a really great tool to find out what happened or what were some of the building characteristics at the time of sale. CoStar is a commercial subscription that we took on. We were able to partner with CPED, but that was a $20,000 a year increase. Again, not something that we've had in the past, but we felt we needed to have that tool in order to produce the best assessment possible and in order to defend values as well. A couple other things that are included in this essential operating expenses would be community engagement. We're doing a lot more as far as getting out into the community. We're doing a lot more with communication with the neighborhoods, when we're going to be out in the fields, what we're doing, just mailers and flyers and things like that. We're also doing career fairs. And career fairs are a great way to get new people into the assessment profession. It's a great way that we're going to introduce, more women into our profession. It's a fairly male-dominated profession, as well as people of color. There is a great success story. We have a person starting on Monday, Rhonda Olson. She's a person who, when we were partnering with the Project for Pride in Living, they did start an assessors program. They did it for the 1 year, where they brought in 6 people that they really, we helped with the training and the education and the work experience. And to her credit, she's a very, very talented individual and somebody who is not in the assessment profession but worked through PPL. We just hired her as an assessor 1, and she starts on Monday. So that was a great success program. So with that, that's all I have on my presentation for the assessor's office. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Todd. I'm not seeing any immediate questions or comments right now. I will put myself in queue and ask a couple. Mr. Todd, how has your office helped to effectively address the massive increase in appeals that you've seen the last couple of years? I would imagine that is a resource-heavy endeavor, and I'm just not sure with your small team, how does that work? I also know you've become more and more focused on community engagement, and I'm just curious what you found to be effective.
Madam Chair, that's a great question. What we've had to do is the majority of our appeals are residential at this point in time. And so our residential staff the last couple of years have really been tapped out. We've worked overtime, we've worked weekends, and it got to the point where as a team, we had to say, you're doing commercial, but at this point in time, we don't have the appeals in the commercial, or they've handled them. The commercial appraisers are helping with the residential. The apartment appraisers are helping with the residential. So we've been able to get through it. But I would say that we don't see the trend going down. Every year, the number of appeals goes up. And part of it is because we're saying, we're being very upfront that if the value is not right, this is how you appeal. We're making applications easy and accessible and transparent. And so at this point in time, it's again, we're just asking staff to do more and more. And we did have staff requests in our initial, but that was not supported by the mayor at this point in time. And we'll make a business case for that again for next year. But at this point in time, it's just asking everybody to work overtime and work longer days to get this done.
Do you foresee, Mr. Todd, a future staffing model where you will be requesting more FTEs to service the general needs of your department?
Absolutely. I think that's really incredibly important. I think as the city continues to grow, and we can definitely show that in the city of Minneapolis, the number of housing units, be it apartments or condominiums, has grown. And for every 5,000 units, the industry standard would say that the assessor's office should grow by 1 FTE, and that has not been the case. In fact, when I started, we had 48 FTEs in my department. We're down to 38. So we would still love to get to that 48 number. But at this point in time, I would absolutely say that appeals are one thing, but just the general volume of real estate's growing, the commercial tax base growing. We are not growing proportionally to keep up with the demand at this point in time.
Thank you. Councilmember Bender?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a question similar to this in an earlier presentation about technology and how our database systems are working. And I remember making this relatively large investment in CAMA, which I think was supposed to help improve efficiency and reduce the number of assessment appeals. How is that going? How is it integrating with the work?
I believe it's a couple years out, but Mr. Todd, go ahead.
Committee Chair Palmisano, Council Vice President Bender. It is. The contract's been signed. We were slotted for a Q4, so sometime before the end of the year, that Tyler, who is the vendor that we had selected, would be coming in, and we're starting to do the transition, which is about an 18 to 20-month transition. It looks like it's going to be Q1 for 2020. We're still hoping for a quarter. And you're right, there will be some definite improvements, because currently my staff are walking out in the field with paper, putting all their notes on the paper, coming back and having to re-enter the information. This new system will be but tablet enabled. So once the change has been made, it'll be uploaded, and there will be definitely some savings. The challenge in our profession is that the statute says that we still physically have to view 20% of the city every year. And as the city physically grows, we physically have to get out there and see them. So even though there's going to be great efficiency, our assessments will be far more accurate, because the technology has gotten that much better since 2000, when our existing software was implemented. I would not see that would allow enough, that would alleviate some of the stresses that we have at this point in time.
And maybe just a follow-up, and Councilmember Johnson stepped out, so I'm asking about the technology system and maybe highlighting something that we were talking about earlier, given where this is at in the process. Since we've had so many problems with other big database shifts or technology system implementation, taking a moment to understand what happened in those different areas, and if this multi-million-dollar investment can benefit from the lessons that have been learned from other system implementations, so that we can avoid the scenario where we've spent millions of dollars on technology and then it somehow has reduced our capacity to serve the public, and sometimes even ends up leading to requests for more staff to then deal with the technology problems that we've already spent millions of dollars on. So this is not just directed at this department. We've been asking these questions and hearing actually a lot of problems coming from these kinds of system implementations.
Yeah.
So for this one, we still have time to take those lessons that we're learning from 911 or CPED or all the other departments that we're hearing so much problems with.
Thank you. Can I respond to that? Because we really spent, my leadership team, we've really spent a lot of time thinking about that. Right now, we're going with a product and a vendor who's very, very established in the state of Minnesota for property taxes. So it's not like we're going with a vendor and we're the first pilot project for them. They've already done Dakota County, Noka County, Scott County, Blue Earth County, and they're looking at a fairly large consortium. So the product that they're using currently is very successful in Minnesota already. We wouldn't expect a significant amount of disruption as far as that goes. We've also decided to start migrating all our data out of Govern, instead of having their system path into Govern, which is a very confusing system, to move our data into a data warehouse, which is a very generic way to store data, and then have it path to that. So we're hoping that will also mitigate any potential problems or frustrations that go along with these major conversions. And so, while every project will have some hiccups, I fully expect that. I think we've been pretty smart about how we're going to tackle this. And we're luckily, again, going with a vendor who is very, very familiar with the property tax system in Minnesota. So.
Thank you, and I think that's really helpful. My second question, and maybe it's for follow-up, is we had met a while ago because a lot of our city's goals around housing stability are impacted by the way we do assessments, and these are set by state law or industry standards, but they include things like when a building is purchased and then sold, like an older apartment building purchased, rents increase, rents double, and now the building is valued higher, or a new building is built and then sold. That very high property value is then used to calculate the values of older buildings around, even if they haven't seen improvements. And while we might not be able to affect that, although I hope we can eventually in the future, that does run counter to our goal of keeping rents stable and helping people stay in their homes and not leading to displacement and homelessness, as we're seeing in our city and around the state, actually. And so we had talked about better coordination between the assessor's office and the folks who are working on our 4D tax incentive program, so that at least if we're going in and assessing a building at much higher value, and even sometimes suggesting that landlords raise their rents, that we are offering this alternative method, which is to give a tax abatement and then encourage landlords to keep their rents lower. Has that coordination been happening, or is there anything to report about how the assessor's office is able to help, communicate about these programs and help with the overall goals of keeping people in their homes?
Council Chair Palmisano, Council Vice President Bender. That's a great question, and absolutely, we were very, very proactive because we'll find that under the appeals process, when property tax owners or property owners are appealing the values, it's oftentimes driven by the taxes. It's really their values. Oftentimes I go, it's fine, or it might be a little bit high, or it might be a little bit low, but it's the taxes that was killing them. And so with that, we were absolutely feeding them the information on the 4D because they would be saying, I want to keep my taxes affordable. I really want to do the right thing. I don't need the money, and I want to be able to pass it on. And unfortunately, in the assessment world, in the valuation world, it's not how you run your building, it's what's the market willing to pay for your building if it were to come up on the market. And if you have your rents 50% or 30% below market, the next investor is going to say, if I buy it at this, I'm raising my rents, and then I'll either resell it or I'll be cash flowing. So no, we've absolutely been very, very proactive on making sure that anybody that had issues with their taxes when they were looking at property or when they were appealing their property, were given information on the 4D program.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I'm seeing none. Thank you for your time, Director Todd.
Thank you for your
I'll
time.
move to receive and file this report. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. And last but not least, we have Director Delaney and the MBC.
Oh, thank you. So do I change them? Oh, okay. And then it's up there.
Welcome, Director Delaney.
Thank you. Excuse me. Good morning. Thank you. My name is Erin Delaney, and I am the Director of the Municipal Building Commission. Thank you for giving me a few minutes this morning to talk about our 2020 operating budget, as well as I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about our capital budget for next year. Let me give you a... That is a org chart of the Municipal Building Commission. We are created by state statute, and as you know, the board is represented by 2 Hennepin County commissioners, as well as Councilmember Goodman serves from the City Council, and Mayor Fry also serves on our board. This just kind of lays out where we have our staff. We have a total of 59 FTE funded in our organization. And I'll talk about those individual departments as we continue. Who we are and what we do. We have 5 business lines. Administration, that's the admin offices in room 105 in City Hall. We provide admin services, obviously, to the MBC board. The board, again, through state statute, approves all space assignments in the building and all budgets for both the operating and capital projects for our facility. Our second business line is the custodial security department, and we have an amazing custodial crew, over 400,000 square feet in this building, and our staff of about 35 keep this building clean and operating. In addition, we have 9 full-time security staff that staff the 4th Street security desk. We have staff on a 24/7 rotation, so there is never a time when we don't have an MBC employee in the facility. In addition, I hope you've noticed that we've started to try to staff additional folks at the 5th Street entrance of the building as well, because we see a real need there. We've got a lot of members of the public who enter on 5th Street, and there isn't a face there all the time to direct them and answer questions. So that's our custodial and security department. Moving on to our next one is our repairs and improvements, and this is primarily our building trades. We have a representative of each building trade at the Building Commission: painters, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, pipe fitter, you name it. And again, tremendously skilled building trade staff. Not only do they have the training for a modern facility, but they also have the techniques and the knowledge to work in a facility that's 125 years old. So that's a real unique skill set. In addition, with repairs and improvements, we have the Adult Detention Center. As you all know, there is a 509-bed jail facility in our building that the MBC custodial staff and building trade staff support that facility. It is funded entirely by Hennepin County, but it is MBC staff that is cleaning and working on the, for example, the plumbing system is a constant source of work orders for the MBC up in the Adult Detention Center. And then our final department is work for others. And this is work that MBC staff does for individual departments that is outside the regular maintenance. And this is work that the individual department would pay for. For example, if you want to move a wall or build a different office, that is what MBC staff does. And it's a pass-through account in the sense that the amount we budget is the amount that is paid by the departments. Next slide. What do we do? It's our goal to provide a safe, functional, and efficient work environment for city staff and for members of the public. And, you know, I know I've said this to you every year, but over 1,700 people enter this facility on a daily basis. That is a large number of people. And we take very seriously that we are oftentimes the first point of contact for these folks that come in the building, whether they're coming into work or coming in with questions. You know, that's an important role that the MBC plays. 125 years old, a gathering place for civic events. We have a very active catering and events program where we rent out the facility for weddings, events, parties, and the commissions that we receive from those events are deposited into a historic preservation fund. And I know, again, I talk about that every year, but that is an important part of our work because as we accumulate revenue in that fund, we can use that for historic restoration in the building, and it's not taxpayer money. ADA compliant, energy efficient. We recently received an award from this body that we reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by over 18%. The driver for that was reduced electrical usage, which is a direct result of the MBC's mechanical and life safety programs, as well as our use of light sensors and energy sensors. I'm sure you've all experienced walking into your office on a Saturday night and it's probably stuffy and the lights don't come on right away, but that's because that's all on sensors, and that helps promote a decrease in electrical usage. Again, we offer tours monthly. We are always available for special tours as well. Current service level, again, we are, our operating budget is split 60% City of Minneapolis, 40% Hennepin County, and that is based on occupancy of the building. Our shared services budget is 0.1% lower than 19. And I've listed what the actual property tax targets are that the city and the county will be paying. We're requesting that they pay for 2020. The city at 5.6 million and the county at 3.7. And here it breaks down a little bit more. You can see the program names again on the left side. I've broken down the FTE counts. Again, we total 59 funded positions. I think I'll just pause on this slide if anybody has any specific questions about the breakout. I'm happy to talk further.
I don't think we do.
Okay. Okay, so just real important information is the capital projects, that those are also administered through the MBC as well. Now, all capital budgets are split 50% Hennepin and 50% City of Minneapolis, and we have got some exciting projects coming to City Hall. If you just go through the list of the projects, the first two, mechanical and life safety, that's the work that you've seen us do the last 21 years, where we pick quadrants of the building and we upgrade them. In conjunction with the life safety and mechanical, there's a possibility of a historic restoration on the first floor, southwest corner of the facility. That is the historic former mayor's office. For the mechanical and life safety, our next two stages will be southwest corner, again, ground floor, property and evidence is where we'll start working. And the goal is that the MBC will property and evidence will relocate. The MBC will get in there and do the mechanical and life safety upgrades, and then the city will backfill it with the new, as you're changing your staffing locations, with the new building and with our building. The third project listed exterior improvements. We have recently awarded a contract for that, and we will start that work hopefully yet this fall. You will see the installation of some scaffolding for additional assessment work that we need. We're starting on the north and east sides of the building, and it focuses on masonry, waterproofing, and windows. The fourth project is the elevator modernization project. I think we all know that the elevators, specifically in the Rotunda area, are in need of an upgrade, and we are happy to be moving forward with that. That project is funded, and we will be starting with that this fall as well. We will incidentally start with elevator number 4, which is in the Rotunda. The next project is the facility safety improvements. And again, this is facility upgrades in areas of the building that are open and unoccupied by offices. For example, we're starting with the Rotunda area. We will be installing some glass smoke barriers at the 4th Street entrance and the 5th Street entrance of the facility, in addition to some smoke and fire detection. Again, these are areas of the building that are not occupied by staff. The next project is the 4th Street sidewalk. Didn't receive any funding for this request. Again, this is just some upgrades we'd like to work on when the city comes through and works on the 4th Street side. There's some upgrades we can do for pedestrian safety at the 4th Street entrance of the building. So we'll hear more about that in the future. And then the last two are county-only projects, locks and electrical systems. But again, it's work that the MBC is doing in the ADC that Hennepin County pays for. So I think this is just additional information about the 3 projects that the mayor has supported the funding. The mechanical and life safety, and then the facility safety improvements. So with that.
Thank you, Director Delaney. While I understand that different funds are used for this, can you help me understand a little bit more about the eventual, hopefully, restoration of the first floor former mayor's quarters into a space that could be used by the public?
Councilmember Palmisano, yes, there's several questions we still need to answer on that, and the most important is how could we use that space efficiently for MBC need, for city needs, and how could we work the restoration into that space and also have it be usable space? We're meeting on that. I can keep the council and certainly Councilmember Goodman updated as we move forward on that. Yes.
That would be nice. Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments from my colleagues. Nope.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I will move to receive and file the Municipal Building Commission's report. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. With this, we have gone through 7 department mayoral briefings today. Thank you for your time, and we will be adjourned.